Xcode runs on Mac OS X only, which means that Macintosh is the only development environment for iPhone OS apps. Dashcode also runs on Mac OS X, but that doesn't mean that Mac OS X is the only development environment for iPhone web apps, because if you look inside an iPhone web app, which we're about to do, you'll see that we are not dealing with compiled code. That's one of the other big differences between an iPhone OS app and an iPhone web app. I'm going to look in my sites folder here, and as you can see, I'm running on a Mac, but I need not be running on a Mac for this. I'm looking at the folder where I can create my own personal website, and I have a folder here called Test that contains an iPhone web app that I built using Dashcode. And if I come into this folder, what you'll see is that I've got some subfolders here, and I have basically an index.html file, which is just like any other index.html file. It is the default page that we go into when we want to get to that section, in this case to the iPhone web app. This is what runs, and it has references to the other folders here. The images folder is like any images folder that you've worked with before. It's got images on it. The mobile folder contains the guts of the app, and what you can see is we've got a file called main, which is obviously the main part of the app. It's a JavaScript file, and I have a CSS file. Then I have parts that I can use, and they may have their own images as well. You can see here's part of a back button, and here's part of a header. But the point to make here is that all of these files use industry standard, and in these cases open source technologies such as JavaScript, HTML, and cascading style sheets, CSS. So everything that you're seeing here can be built with Dashcode, but you can also develop the code yourself. For example, the index.html file here, I'm running it now. If I look at the source, you can see this is the same type of file that you would have in any environment. There are some references to style sheets and to JavaScripts here, but basically what you're seeing here is a very ordinary type of HTML file that you can build by hand. It's much easier to build it with Dashcode, and if you take an iPhone web app that has been built with Dashcode, so you've got all of that structure there, you can then modify that code for another purpose. But the basic structure is built by Dashcode, and what it's doing is it's putting in some canned JavaScript, some canned images and so forth, so that the app is ready to go, but it's not compiled the way an Xcode app would be. Rather than being compiled, it is the same code that runs. JavaScript is not compiled, it's executed and put together at runtime. So nothing is compiled here, but there doesn't seem to be much of a difference in the performance that we're looking at. So that's what web apps are structurally. I'm going to be using Dashcode to develop them because it's easier. Many people do that, and also because the logical structure of web apps is easier to see using Dashcode. Now let's take a look at what web apps look like when you look at them on Apple's web apps page.